Consumed. Westlake Trilogy Book 1 by J.C. Jarrett. Chapter 3. First Blood. Grover raised his throbbing head from his filthy floor, looking about seeing that the pair was gone, and he had no idea how much of a head start they had or which direction they went in. An idea quickly took form in his head as the fat man slowly pulled himself to his feet. Rubbing his aching head, the huge man moved to the back of the house where the slave girl had slept last night on an old grain sack. Picking the sack up from the floor, he headed for the door, only stopping long enough to pull down a large single-bladed axe from the wall. Running his thumb down its edge in inspection, the fat man grumbled to himself, "Just you wait, Peyton, when I catch you, it'll be your end." Hanging the axe off his belt, the large man headed out his still open door, making a straight line for his weather-beaten, run-down barn. Opening the small door in the side, two large hunting dogs came out bouncing around the fat man as he took down two heavy leather straps off the barn wall. Looping the straps over the dogs' heads, he held the old grain sack up for them to smell. "You two are going to help hunt down a couple escaped critters," Grover said to the two excited dogs. The pair had been on the move for over 2 hours, and Peyton could tell that Elisa's pain was becoming more than she could stand. She kept pushing herself, not wanting to put as much distance between them and Grover as they could. The forest was unusually quiet, like all the animals knew something was about to happen and was waiting to watch it play out. Finally cresting to the top, a large hill, Peyton with Elisa leaning against him, her whole body covered with sweat from the effort. Looking at their surroundings, the young warrior realized they stood at the top of a small valley with a clearing in the bottom. "Let's get to the bottom, and we will take a rest," the young warrior said to the hurting young women. As they reached the floor of the valley, stood in the small clearing next to a large rock. Peyton eyed the rock setting, nearly 5 foot tall, and more than twice that in length and width. He thought it would be perfect for Elisa to use to set on to get off her leg. The young warrior reached down, taking the slender beauty by the waist, and set her atop the rock while he knelt and checked her leg. Elisa was so thankful to be off her feet, she didn't know how to react. She looked down at the man who had never seen her before yesterday, and was amazed that one person could instill so much hope in another. Before today, she had always just considered that she would die a slave, but not now. Even if she was to expire in the next second, she was no longer or ever again go to be a slave. The more Peyton looked at her leg, the more he wished he had just run that fat man through. He had no idea how she was even walking. It must be pure willpower was all he could think of. Looking about from tree to tree, the young warrior finally spotted what he wanted. "Wait right here," he said to the injured women, and went to turn away, but was stopped when she reached out and took his hand. "Peyton," she began, "I want you to know that no matter what, I'm eternally grateful for all you have done for me. Nobody has—" Her voice broke as a few tears escaped her beautiful green eyes. Unable to finish, she bent down from her seat on the rock and kissed the young warrior on the cheek. "My hero," she whispered in his ear. For a long moment, their faces were barely an inch apart. His blue eyes stared deeply into her green. Finally, he broke the silence. "You're welcome, Elisa," was all he could think to say. Her words and kiss on the cheek had stolen away his ability to think. Suddenly, the tree he was getting ready to head for came back into his thoughts. "I'll be right back." He moved only 15 feet away or so to a tall tree standing alone at the edge of the clearing. Reaching up and grabbing a low branch, he pulled himself into the tree. From branch to branch he moved till he got to the spot where he saw the branch he was looking for. Reaching onto his belt, the young warrior removed a dagger and began to cut into the thin branch that was no more than an inch thick. It didn't take too long before he was making his way back down the tree with the branch in hand. Elisa watched the young warrior intently. She had no idea what he was up to, but it must be important was all she could figure. Dropping to the ground, Peyton walked back to her with the branch striping the twigs and leaves off as he walked. Then she saw what he had done. He held in his hand a crutch for her to use so she could stay off her leg. She smiled at his ingenuity and took the offered crutch. "Thank you again," she said. She slid down the rock, then propped the crutch under her arm, testing it out. Elisa moved about the small clearing faster than she was moving before, and the pain, though still there, was not as intense with her weight off it. Dog barks cut through the stillness of the wood, causing Peyton and Elisa to both turn toward the top of the small ridge. The young girl began to panic when she saw the dog's crest of the ridge leading her tormentor behind them. Peyton looked about the clearing and cursed himself for letting them become trapped. There was no way Elisa was going to outrun those dogs on her leg, even with the crutch. Grover looked down into the small valley, an evil grin spread across his face. He knew they could not get away this time, not with his dogs here. The dogs pulled on the leashes, barking and snarling, wanting loose so they can get at their prey. Dropping the loops of the leashes, the dogs tore from him, heading down into the valley, the largest of the dogs pulling away from the other. "Get 'em?" The fat man called from the ridge to his dogs. Peyton heard the dogs tearing through the underbrush, their bays and barks drawing ever closer. Turning quickly, he grabbed Elisa around the waist, setting her back on the rock. "Stay up here," his voice showing the panic he was trying to hide. Putting the dagger in her hand, the young warrior called out, "Just in case," as he moved to intercept the lead dog while drawing his straight sabers. Since he was old enough to hold a blade, his father has taught him swordplay and combat tactics. But until this moment, it had all been fake, never any real danger. Peyton's hands shook uncontrollably, and he tried to recall anything from his extensive training. But he was lucky right now to remember what end of the weapon to hold, as scared as he was. The lead dog tore from the tree line, its teeth bared as it leapt toward the warrior's face. Pure instinct took over, and one blade slashed out in a wide arc, catching the airborne dog in the belly, slicing it wide open, allowing his mass of entrails to spill out onto the ground. The dog slammed into the stunned warrior, splashing him with blood and gore. Then it lay on the ground, whining and panting its last breaths. Peyton had dreamt many times of real life or death combat, of action. But he never knew it would be like this, to see the blood and the damage he had caused made bile rise into his throat. Saliva filled his mouth, warning him that his stomach contents would soon follow. But that never happened due to the slower dog breaking from the underbrush and snapping the young warrior's attention back to reality. The dog was almost to his face by the time Peyton reacted, and did the only thing he could, brought his left forearm up, blocking the dog from tearing at his throat. The dog's powerful jaws sank its teeth deep into the young warrior's flesh, bring a scream of pain. Its legs flailed and kicked, tearing at his clothes and skin as it thrashed its head back and forth, ripping into Peyton's forearm. Punching out repeatedly with the pommel of his right hand blade, Peyton tried desperately to force the dog to release his arm. Blow after blow found its home, until finally the pommel connected with the animal's eye, causing it to explode out, raining more gore upon the already revolted warrior. The dog released its prey and ran deep into the wood, yelping the whole way. Pain shot up Peyton's arm as blood poured from the wound, but he had no time to worry about that right now. The huge bulk of Grover filled his vision with his large axe held overhead, ready to strike. It was pure luck that the young warrior managed to get his blade crossed over his head in time to stop the blow from ending his life. Panting for breath, Peyton was forced to hold the block as the fat man tried with all his might to push the axe down into his head. Grover snarled his face just inches from Peyton's as he put all his strength and weight into the axe. The young warrior's elbows began to bend in protest as the fat man smiled so wide it could be seen through the massive unkempt beard. "Now you die," Grover growled into the younger warrior's face as the axe continued to lower. Several counters to overhead attacks came into Peyton's mind, and he cursed each one because they did him no good now. All the work and time he spent training, and he was going to die in his first real fight. But what hurt him more was the thought of Grover getting his hands back on poor Elisa. Thoughts of her caused flames of anger to ignite in his eyes, and the words of his father echoed in his ears. A warrior's blades are just an extension of the real weapon, the warrior's own body and mind. Peyton's boot come up driving hard into the fat man's groin in 3 extremely rapid kicks. The weight on the axe lightened, allowing the young warrior to quickly slide his left blade down the shaft of his adversary's weapon, feeling it bite into the flesh of Grover's huge hand. The axe fell away as the young warrior's foot came up again, knocking the screaming fat man over backwards. Quickly grabbing Elisa from the rock, the young warrior cradled her in his arms as he ran from the clearing, seeking the shelter of the deeper wood. For nearly 20 minutes, the warrior ran still, carrying the girl. Sweat poured from the young man, and his breath came in ragged gasps, but still he tried to push on. Elisa tried and tried to get him to stop, but he seemed to not hear her. Finally, his body could not go anymore, and the warrior collapsed to his knees, still holding Elisa close and tight to him. Over and over she called his name. Reaching up, she took his face in both of her hands, turning him to face her. She could see the fear and revulsion in his eyes for what he had done. "Peyton, Peyton," she said. "He gave you no choice. He would have killed you yet. You still spared his life. You have nothing to be sorry for." She finished her words by wrapping her arms around the young warrior's neck. She held him for several minutes till she felt most of the tension leave him, and his head came to rest on her shoulder. "It's okay, you did the only thing you could," she whispered into his ear. "I'm sorry for the way I acted." He finally spoke, his voice just a whisper with their heads still so close together. "Nonsense, you were in shock at the whole situation, and you're amazing. I've never seen someone move the way you do," the girl said, enjoying the closeness of him to her. Peyton smiled, feeling more like himself. His arms ached from the strain of carrying the girl, even though she barely weighted anything, but the pain in his forearm was becoming unbearable, and blood still seeped from the wound. Setting the girl in the soft grass, he tore a strip off his shirt, wrapping it around his torn and bloodied forearm. Peyton looked up at Elisa as she sat in front of him, but his eyes were drawn away from hers when he spotted a shiny pair of yellow eyes staring at them from a brush about 20 yards away. He knew what the eyes were and what it meant. Goblins was about. This one, more than likely a scout for a much larger hunting group, had just found a goblin's favorite meal in the whole world: humans.